Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles. Today we have a grand battle for you, two teams of 9 players, all tier 10, starring Silent Metal here, as one half of a 2-player Shimakaze division. Each team has 1 aircraft carrier, 5 battleships, and 1 extremely nervous light cruiser, as well as the 2 destroyers. It's not an exclusively tier 10 battle, there are some tier 9s present, notably the Iowa and the Fletcher on the enemy team, and I've just noticed that, of course, Wargaming have managed to sneak yet another bug into the replay system in the last patch. So I'll just go ahead and fix that, start things going again, and there are, of course, also 2 tier 9s on, whoops, careful with the axe, Eugene, 2 tier 9s on Silent Metal's team as well, the Neptune and the Sovietsky Soyuz. Now, I don't often feature Shimakaze replays because, while it's entirely possible to rack up a monster score in a Shimakaze in World of Warships, it tends to be kind of dull to watch. Because if you're doing it right in the Shimakaze, you're basically just scoring lots and lots and lots of torpedo hits and never getting spotted. And that's not terribly exciting to watch. Generally speaking, a Shimakaze replay is only interesting when things go horribly, horribly wrong. And when things go wrong in the Shimakaze, they tend to go wrong very, very quickly indeed. Things are going to go wrong in this battle. Oh, hell yes. And it's how Silent Metal deals with things when they start going wrong that was the reason why I thought you've got to see this. And you really do. Because this is amazing. And this is the thing that I love about World of Warships and World of Tanks. I mean, you know, there's lots to not like about World of Warships and World of Tanks, but at the same time, I mean, I'm a bit of an old hand at World of Warships by now. I've been playing since it was in closed beta. And while it's true they still keep adding new ships and new nations and new lines within those nations, and there are new premiums coming out all the time, there's always some new gimmick, they're all still just variations on a common theme. I mean, at the end of the day, it's ships. Aside from sticking a flight deck on top of it and launching aircraft off it, there's a limit to the variation that you can actually have in a game like World of Warships. Also, you would think. You'd think that after 5 years and millions of games played that you'd have pretty much seen everything by now that would be possible to happen. I mean, there's only so many different ways you can torpedo a battleship. And yet, somehow, this game, and the people who play it, continue to find ways to surprise me. I mean, this isn't surprising. Oh look, a battleship charging forward at full speed into an area where 2 destroyers were spotted. I mean, the only thing surprising about that is that it still happens. That's not what I'm talking about. I mean, it's funny. Don't forget, this is grand battles. You have to play a whole bunch of battles in other ships in order to get the intelligence tokens. Oh, and can we, you know, while we're on that subject, just all take a moment to admire the sublime genius of whoever it was at Wargaming who, in a stroke of irony, decided to label them intelligence tokens. Required to unlock the 2 new super battleships, the Satsuma and the Hanover. I mean, that Hanover player had to play I don't know how many games in order to get the tokens required to unlock the Hanover, and he's dead in the first 3 minutes. I hope he enjoyed his new ship. I don't somehow think he's had enough time to evaluate a proper opinion on the ship's capabilities, however. Intelligence tokens, really? Whatever. Right, anyway. A promising start, or so you'd think, but one of the team's own... There he goes. Yeah, I was about to say, one of the team's own Hanovers is down to 12,000 health already, and I was apparently overstating the case. He's dead too. Meanwhile, enemy Satsuma over there, down to half health already. I'm not quite sure what happened to him, but he at least has the right idea. Having witnessed what just happened to his teammate in the Hanover, And realising that there are probably two Shimikazes bearing down on him at great speed, he is turning around and making for the safety of that island in the centre of the screen, trying to get something solid between him and the incoming wall of skill. This does of course mean that he's going to be exposing an awful lot of broadside to incoming fire, which is probably why he's down to half health in the first place, but well, you have to kind of sympathise with his position. He's going to make a choice between the devil or the deep blue sea. Unfortunately, Silent Metal kind of anticipated what it was that he was doing, launched multiple torpedoes at different angles. The Satsuma sees them coming. It's way too late for him to do anything about it. There he goes, very quickly followed by the enemy Iowa, putting the team up briefly 3 kills to 1, but before we can start celebrating, the friendly Satsuma meets the same ignoble fate. So, with the enemy Hanover and Satsuma taken care of, and with the Slava over there, the next closest enemy battleship, very wisely in full retreat, if you have a look at the minimap, you'll see the last reported location of the enemy carrier, the Immelmann, doing fairly standard carrier things, just kind of lurking behind an island up there. You'd think that, given the fact that a Hanover and a Satsuma have both just been torpedoed to death by a couple of destroyers that the Immelmann himself had been spotting just a minute ago, you could be forgiven for thinking that the Immelmann might be getting just a little bit concerned about the way this situation is developing, and, well, to be fair, he is sending aircraft over in this direction. But Shimikazes are incredibly difficult to spot from the air, especially if they've turned off their anti-aircraft guns, and Silent Metal has obviously done that. Right now he's waiting for his torpedoes to reload, and then he dumps a full spread of 20-kilometre range noob tubes in the approximate location of where the Immelmann was spotted 6 whole minutes ago. So just think about this for a minute. With around about 19 minutes and 9 seconds of the battle remaining, the Immelmann was spotted lurking behind that island. In that intervening period of time, he has spotted 2 approaching enemy destroyers. Those 2 enemy destroyers have sunk 2 Tier 10 super battleships. He clearly thinks that he's about to have a Shimikaze problem because he sent out aircraft in an attempt to find them, and he has found Silent Metal's division mate, DK Ed, over there, and has dropped fighters on top of him in order to keep him spotted for the enemy ships that are currently shooting at him. But he's only found 1 of the 2 destroyers that he spotted earlier. He hasn't found Silent Metal. Bearing that in mind, you might think that it would be a good idea for the Immelmann to maybe move. Let's just check out those torpedoes. You can see them out there in the distance. Remember, these are the 20-kilometre range torpedoes. They're not particularly fast with a speed of 62 knots, although that's not particularly slow either. We're not talking Elbing torpedoes here or anything, but they're still going to take a couple of minutes to cross the distance. Did anybody bring a pack of cards? Sorry, but this is Shimikaze gameplay. Oh wait, there he is. And he's eaten 2 torpedoes. Actually, no. He's going to eat 3. That really happened. 3 torpedo hits launched in the approximate direction of a carrier who was spotted 10 minutes ago, and he's still there. Despite the fact that he knew destroyers were coming for him. Oh, the team has lost a Neptune, by the way. That happened a couple of minutes ago. The Neptune went down shortly after the Satsuma did, but he did pretty much single-handedly manage to keep most of the enemy ships over on that side of the map from pushing forward because they were all terrified of a Tier 9 light cruiser. The Immelmann's launched, I think, skip bombers. But, well, from this range, Silent Metal could see them being launched, so he was able to maneuver to avoid detection with plenty of time to spare. These torpedoes are looking pretty good. Is the Immelmann moving? I did actually see a puff of smoke from his engines. He has actually figured out that he's in a ship and not an airfield. Wow, it's amazing how easy it is to avoid torpedoes that were fired at you from 11 kilometres away a minute earlier. Look at that. Silent Metal switching to his guns. The Shimikaze is by no means a gunboat. Mostly down to the glacially slow turret traverse. And while it does have a slow reload compared to other tier 10 destroyers, the shells do hit kind of hard. Despite setting a fire and a flood, there's no way he's going to actually flood or burn the Immelman to death, because of course, what aircraft carrier ever actually sank as a result of getting torpedoed or set on fire? But the guns should be able to do the trick, and in fact they have. And I don't think I'd be exaggerating if I were to say that the team really needed that kill, because somehow, in the length of time that it took for those torpedoes to get there and Silent Metal's guns to finish the Immelman off, his team have lost a further 3 ships and are now trailing 6 kills to 4, which once again proves that there's no such thing as a start to a battle in World of Warships that's so good that your team cannot somehow manage to find a way of snatching defeat right from the jaws of victory. Torpedoes launched again, not at any one particular target, but somebody's capping down there. Probably the Fletcher, which is likely to be extremely bad news for the friendly Sovietsky Soyuz, right next to the cap circle that's being flipped. Still, look on the bright side, the team do still have an aircraft carrier. And don't underestimate the usefulness of having an aircraft carrier when your team's outnumbered nearly 2 to 1. It is a massive advantage, and the team would be foolish to squander it. Although I cannot help but notice, while the enemy Immelman wasn't particularly bright, but he at least had the sense to hide behind an island. The friendly Richthofen seems to be trying to hide in front of one. Now, I'm not exactly the world's leading authority on the noble art of how not to be seen, but I'm pretty sure that's not how you do it. Oh. Oh well. Silent Metal still has a surviving Sovietsky Soyuz on his team. And while we can't see him directly because he's too far away at the moment, I'm not overly optimistic about his chances. I mean, aside from the fact that he's got a Fletcher, a Yu-Yang and a Smolensk probably within about 7 kilometres of him, that's probably the Smolensk smokescreen down there. He was also getting torpedoes dropped on him by the Immelman. Yes, I know the Immelman sank 2 or 3 minutes ago. Don't ask questions, it's World of Warships. In fact, even the Hanover has popped up and started shooting at him now as well. So just wrap your heads around this for a second. Of the 5 enemy ships remaining, 6 of them are attacking the Sovietsky Soyuz. And in fact, it was the 6th who got the kill. The Immelman, who was sunk 4 minutes ago, just claimed the kill on the Sovietsky Soyuz. Which of course means that our hero Silent Metal is now alone against 5 enemy ships. More than half of the enemy team. I'll say this much for the Immelman player, he is a good sport, he's right there in chat saying GG and well played to the Shimakaze. The rest of the enemy team are already celebrating, and why shouldn't they? I mean, they're winning 5 to 1, they've got a 500 point lead, and they're about to take control of the final of the 3 caps. All they have to do is find and sink, well, they don't even have to find and sink Silent Metal. They're going to win on points within about 2 minutes. I do have to congratulate the Fletcher, by the way. Apparently he's done over 400,000 damage in a tier 9 destroyer in this mostly tier 10 grand battle, and that's an impressive amount of damage to do in a random battle where there are 12 players, never mind a grand battle when there are only 9. Although he is being more than a little disingenuous in chat. What he actually said was 412k. Is that good? Fuck off, Fletcher. You know it's good. Stop fishing for compliments. Anyway, good news, bad news situation. Good news, he has caught that Hanover and Slava kind of flat-footed. I mean, broadside on battleships, and the range isn't great. Unfortunately, the first salvo has missed completely. The Slava now knows that there are torpedoes coming, and appears to be turning in order to avoid. And they're looking this way, of course, because they've seen the torpedoes. That was the good news. The bad news is somebody on the enemy team has the RPF skill, so somebody has a big fat arrow on their screen pointing right in Silent Metal's direction. One of those torpedoes hit out of 15 launched. Silent Metal is going to have to do significantly better than that in order to get out of this one alive. Now, there's only around 5 minutes of this game remaining, and he's in a Shimakaze. he is going to need all of those enemy ships all clustered up in one nice spot. Not just the Hanover, not just the Slava. He's going to need all of them clustered up in one nice spot. And he's going to have to get ridiculously lucky with his remaining torpedoes. And he's probably, at best, only got 2 torpedo launchers left on each launcher, because this is the Shimakaze with the 20-kilometer range noob tubes. They have a nearly 2-minute reload. There just isn't enough time left for him to mount enough successful attacks without the enemy team helping him out. And it's at this point when I noticed the enemy team were flipping Capture Point Charlie. And now they're not. Which can only mean one thing. The Yu-Yang, Fletcher and Smolensk are all trying to win harder than they already are. And then I noticed something else. No, not the 2 torpedo hits and the flood. Let me just rewind and zoom in. Watch for some shots coming from behind the island. There, do you see them? That is the Yu-Yang shooting at the Fletcher. The Fletcher, who was bragging about his 412,000 damage done, wants to get 430,000 damage done, and the Yu-Yang wants the kill instead. Meanwhile, the 2 torpedoes that hit the Hanover did cause a flood, remember, and because the earlier torpedo hit also caused a flood, his damage control was on cooldown, so now it's 1 against 4. You'd think with the last enemy ship spotted, everybody would be trying to get this kill. The Slava can't, he's on the far side of an island, but it's actually only the Smolensk who's shooting at silent metal. The Fletcher isn't shooting at anybody, and the Yu-Yang is shooting at the Fletcher. I guess the Fletcher bragging about his 400,000 damage has really pissed that Yu-Yang off, although what's probably going to piss him off even more are the torpedoes that he just sailed into while trying to sink his teammate. Now, I don't know for sure, but I think what's actually going on with this Fletcher, as the Smolensk behind him suddenly realises that he's about to die to a torpedo, and in fact does, is that the Fletcher just quit out of protest for the extreme dickishness of his teammates. I mean, he made no attempt to fire his guns, he made no attempt to launch his torpedoes, he didn't even use his damage control when he'd been set on fire. I think, as far as the Fletcher was concerned, it was a case of, okay, you're going to be dicks about it? Fine. Go ahead, see if you can win this game without me. The poor old Slava on the other side of that island, who couldn't actually do anything about it and was forced to just sit there and watch the battle feed as ship after ship sank, as his team just self-destructed only a couple of kilometres away from his position. He's the guy I feel sorry for here. But it all just goes to prove once again, as if it needed any further proof, and we've seen it happen twice in this match so far, that there is no such thing as such a commanding lead, as such an advantageous position in a game of World of Warships that is so good that your team cannot somehow find a way of throwing it all away and snatch defeat, kicking and screaming from the very jaws of victory. And it always seems to happen when one team's ahead and they decide, you know what, we're winning, and that's cool, but what if we tried to win just that little bit harder? If they'd stopped to cap Charlie, they'd have won by now. But some people always have to just try and win that little bit harder. And now it's curtains for the Slava, because he's only going to get 1 shot at this. And that's assuming his guns are even pointing in the right direction. And they're not. In fact, he wasn't even moving. His engines have only just turned on. Okay, well, I take it all back. The Slava doesn't deserve our sympathy. He deliberately hid behind the island, waiting for the Smolensk, Fletcher and Yu-Yang to finish the game for him. Well, the game's been ended for him now, but probably not in the way he was anticipating. That team somehow managed to find a way to take what is probably the most surefire, guaranteed, gen-dit, no-shit win and turn it into what is easily, by far, the most embarrassing defeat I have ever seen in 5 years of playing World of Warships. And that is a hell of an achievement, because trust me, when you play World of Warships for 5 years and you watch anything up to a dozen World of Warships replays most days for 5 years, you see an awful lot of embarrassing defeats, but that was by far the worst. Silent Metal, you must feel privileged to have taken part. in a game of such epic proportions. Congratulations on the win. However you achieved it, a win's a win. Everyone else, I hope you enjoyed today's video extravaganza, and as always, take care, stay safe. And I don't think the Fletcher did 400,000 damage, because he only received 800 experience, so somebody's bullshitting. And I'll catch you next time.